Good morning. I wanted to share a couple of thoughts. There'll be those who have seen my last video and maybe some of my other videos, and you might get the feeling I hate role-playing games, but I do not. I love role-playing games. I love all types of role-playing games. Um, but when you're designing and you have a particular thing you want to achieve, you have these design philosophies you're trying to adhere to achieve what it is you want to do. It's not just, hey, we're going to make another role-playing game with another set of mechanisms when, well, heck, I can go back to 1984 and pick Star Frontiers if I just want to play sci-fi role-playing game, right? Or I could pick Gamma World or any umpteen fantastic science fiction, including, let's face it, one of the greatest of all time, Traveler, right? So we're not making just another traditional role-playing game. We're trying to make a role-playing game that sets a play style, right? That makes it easy to do a particular play style, right? Does that mean you have to play it in that way? No. Dark Age of Man, same thing. You can play it more traditionally if you want to, right? But that's going to require what I call deliberate play. So it may sound like I'm picking on Call of Cthulhu when I talk about the novelty of mechanism, or I'm picking on 2D20 with Doom and Threat, or I'm not. I completely respect those design choices. Panic in what is it, Alien? I think Alien has the panic effect, or the when you're shattered, or whatever design mechanisms a game does on purpose are on purpose. But those mechanisms tend to impact the player more than I want them to, right? So what we're trying to do is say we want the player to establish their character's personality, who they are, and who they want to embody and play. Make it as easy for them to do that in character as they want to, and then pursue through simple conversation, whether they decide to take on a voice or they decide to, just converse in first person or whatever. Um, that there's just no mechanism that dictates how they play because rules first, I think, are designed to create a certain experience, right? All rules, and they're also designed to control player behavior, right? We all have had that guy who says, "Why can't I do this? Why can't I fly?" Well, dude, you can't fly, right? You're gonna have those guys that test the boundaries. But if you're playing with people who respect the genre, they respect the table, they respect each other, there's trust there, then you're just not going to have these problems. People want to adhere, I think, to the space and to the character. And there are those who don't, but there are those who don't like to pay for the groceries. They like to walk out, you know, as shoplifters, right? So, again, you can't account for everybody, right? So what happens when you attempt to account for all of it? You end up with so much shit locked up behind glass cases that you're constantly calling over someone to open a case to get your laundry detergent out of a locked case, right? Um, so because people steal laundry detergent, we end up having to wait for somebody to unlock our laundry detergent and escort us to the front to pay for our laundry detergent, right? This is the nature of man. So we have to adhere to certain game rules because of some past jackass or some past anarchists, so to speak. So I don't, and I know the language may sound harsh to many people when I say they're contrivances, but they contrive a space in which we are going to have this experience, whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, then don't play D&D. And if you don't like it, don't play Call of Cthulhu. So that's a good thing because it shows that we can create games that create experiences. So what Dell and I are saying is, well, we know the experience we would like to proliferate. We know the experience that I want to have. We know the experience I want to have as a GM, and I know the experience I would love to have as a player consistently. And that requires us to have certain design philosophies that we adhere to. One, simple GM preparation. Two, shared understanding of the setting and the space so everybody's informed equally. Three, tell the GM they cannot know. They are still required to have authority. They're still required to operate the world. They're still required to operate the NPCs, but to do so relevant and in context to what's happening around the players. The characters become the focal point. The world exists. The characters are the focal point. I'm not interested in what your big bad behind the curtain is doing. That's nonsense. I'm only interested in what Dell is doing. And if I focus on Dell, the world around Dell is that's all that matters as Dell moves through the space because we're playing for Dell. We're playing for Dell, Bill, and Skip, right? Not for my magic Oz behind the curtain that I'm going to reveal in session 14. They're going to find out who's been pulling the strings. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what we're designing, right? So when I use some terms, I know it's probably off-putting to some, but it's in my opinion, it's the best. It's the best. Sometimes being direct is better than pussyfooting around, right? Okay. So that we have certain design philosophies that we adhere to. We have a style we want to do. We know we want to make communication as fluid as possible for somebody in character to just declare and to move through the space live. We want the game live. Our games have no procedures and they have no initiative order. They have no procedure order. If we're doing it and you say you're doing it, it's happening, right? And then we just play. We respond to that with reaction, reaction, action. So there are these particular design philosophies, and the reason for that, like Call of Cthulhu's design philosophies, are to create horror and to create that effect upon your character via mechanics, because you can't promise that players will actually experience the sense of going insane or the sense of questioning your sanity. So you could see in Call of Cthulhu literally that you're either going insane or are you questioning your sanity? See, I would play Call of Cthulhu with it being that because people who are nuts are going nuts or think they're nuts or whatever, right? You can not be insane and think you are, or you can be a little nuts and not know you're a little nuts. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, what is sanity? Is sanity some actual measurable, and does it mean we are insane, or does it mean I'm actually questioning my sanity more as the game goes on? Right? Now we can use the term you're questioning your sanity to prompt a roll, but you get my point. That's style versus game design intent. And this is where I think I have a problem with most of game design out there. The game is designed to do a thing traditionally, and everybody adheres to it, and it's comfortable. It's what they know. But there's the unintended consequences of that design upon style. Or we can design a game that says style is as important as the mechanism of control, the behavioral control, right? What if we say, well, I want to control your behavior by allowing you to play in character as character as freely as possible without a lot of stuff to gum up the velocity of play, right? I want communication to be direct and simple. I want it could be conversational. It could be deliberate, right? So really, Dell and I are making deliberate design choices to support style, not just the game mechanism itself, right? The game mechanism is to support the style of play. Okay. So that's like a pillar of our design philosophy. How do we get to the place we want both sides of the table to be consistently, right? And Dark Age of Man achieves some of that, but through purposeful design choices, it also can be the genre. It can be just the nature of the genre of fantasy using magic, required we have some controls upon that, which we call a DV, right? So you have to know why you're designing it, and you have to know to what end. What are you trying to get the players to do? Well, we're trying to get players to be a little more proactive. We're trying to get players to go for it, embrace sharing a narrative space, right? As the GM, traditionally, we do all the describing, right? We're your sight, your sound, your ears, your smell. We're not your consciousness. We're not your feelings, but we are everything else to you, including knowing the secrets. Well, we're trying to say, that's okay. You can describe a little bit around you. You can have a little freedom to really sink into what you're seeing in your movie, because in your head, it's your movie. And we know psychologically this is true in real life, right? I only can see the world through my perspective, right? And you're seeing the world through your perspective. And these are facts. And we can come to some agreement and share some certain things for us to function and agree. And normally language is how we do that. I have to be free to speak my mind and to work through things so people can understand where I'm coming from, but also so I can understand what it is I'm trying to say. But along the way, I may say something like contrivances that bristles somebody's, right? But it's because that's how I am trying to recognize what that means to me as a player and as a GM, and how I don't want my game to resemble that. Right. So if I feel that's a contrivance when I play those games or I GM those games, then that particular word that might make somebody a little irritated is also the same word that's going to remind me I don't want that. I don't want our game to be about mechanics. I need mechanics to resolve game, but I don't want the game to be about mechanics. And this is a big, big difference. People who go to Pathfinder want those mechanics, and there's nothing wrong with that. They want those tactical mechanics. They want to know they're deliberate when they create their character, deliberate in play, and deliberate in combat. There is zero wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But I don't get from Pathfinder when I want to be a character with a little more agency, and I want to be a character in a fictional space in which I'm trying to succeed in my goals that may or may not center around tactical combat, right? Or something like that. Okay. So again, there's certain pillars of design philosophy Dale and I are adhering to. And for us to be able to do that, we have to understand the language of design for us, and we have to understand what we're not. We're not going to be like, um, I guess the closest thing we're going to be like is Dark Age of Man, finely tuned and streamlined to enhance the play style we really were trying to get to with Dark Age of Man, which we achieved. But Space Age of Man is the next step. And this is there is a fine line we walk between mechanisms dictating the genre and mechanisms controlling behavior toward a genre. So, for instance, this is kind of going to be gritty industrial sci-fi, a little more real than high fantasy. It's not going to be space opera science fiction. It's not going to be pulpy, right? This is adhering closer to, say, 2001: A Space Odyssey, or a more grounded kind of pseudo historical, right? So how do we impart to the players that, right? Well, we don't have to, right? How we write the setting, how we impart what you can and cannot do through subtle choice of vocabulary, etc. And then, of course, how we prepare the naive narrator to create the space that they're going to have this, for lack of a better term, a sandbox style of session, right? And I don't mean campaign, but at least session, right? So I hope people understand that my transparency when I discuss gaming and I discuss my frustrations, they're number one, they're mine, right? I don't want anyone out there to take personally anything I say, because I'm not talking about you and I'm not talking about your tables, right? I'm talking about me. These are my things, right? These are the things that I need to work through. They're the things that I think are important to me as a designer. They're important to me as a GM now. They're important to me as a player, and therefore I want, if I'm going to put out the effort to write yet another book, I want the whole package, right? That means I'm going to design the actual mechanism. I don't care if it's reminds people of something else. I don't care if it's somewhat derivative, because we live in a world where there's 50 years of role-playing theory, and there's 50 years of physical role-playing game devices out there. The idea that we're going to create a mechanism the world's never seen is nonsense. It's not our goal. Our goal is to make sure the mechanism 1000% supports the style of play we're asking the GM to do and their responsibilities, and the player as character and their responsibilities. And so the best way for us to do that is to create the entire package. And we're not trying to create an engine that we can then sell 52 different IPs with, right? We're not trying to make year zero engine where they go in, now we can buy the IP for this, this, and this, and plug in all of these. We can put all these suits on that skeleton. No, you will find that Dark Age of Man has the same play style, attitudes, and the same design philosophies. And what we're trying to create at the table as live play, character focused, player driven, naive narrator. But the game mechanism will not be the same, right? We're not trying to create a engine that the whole world is stumbling over itself to bow at our feet and tell us, oh, how great our game engine is. No, it's about creating a space at the table that is consistent to the style of play that we enjoy. And that's not easy to do. And we may not get it completely right. I said before, there are things about Dark Age of Man I wish I had known, but I think I think if you are authentic in your creation, whether you're a musician, I mean, if you were to ask the average musician, if you were to ask Bruce Springsteen, what would what about your first recordings? They would probably go, boy, what if I only knew then what I know now, right? So Dark Age of Man will have its warts, and it'll work the way it was designed to work. And there will be moments where I say, man, now I wish maybe I had, maybe worded it this way, or maybe I had not added that effect to the game or whatever. And now the Space Age of Man will be our next step along this evolution as game designers. And we are literally designing games. We are not designing settings for game systems, right? We're not writing a campaign book for the D20 system. We're not writing a a world setting and campaign guide for 2D20, right? We are literally creating standalone games that will have engines that support what it is we're trying to effectively do and create a space again for the GM and the players that create a style of play and hopefully create a consistency through that. And what ends up happening is it helps in a way, I think, foster a different attitude toward a habitual attitude toward how we can do this thing in the shared description space of description or narrative. Emergent story, emergent play creates a narrative description, freedom for players to describe some of the information is imparts their character and narrative upon the full deal, right? How far that freedom goes is generally within the bounds of somebody in the headspace of a character. They don't generally go beyond that and say, and the general right now is tossing and turning in his bed because he's heard I'm here. Okay, that's movie stuff, right? We turn to a general who's sweating bullets because he's heard there's an agent in town. That's omniscient, right? Well, players generally, once they're in the space, aren't going to have omniscient attitudes toward narrative. That's more writer room style gaming, right? Are we omniscient about laying out the foundation for the turning point of this scene? And there are games that could do that and should do that because I think they should be different experiences, right? So people can be characters in a where it's about the characters in the story and not about competency necessarily, being the hero, right? Or whatever, right? But experiencing characters in a story that may be shared, right? That's not what we're doing. We're allowing players to run. There is not going to be. What would you like to do now, Dell? I've told you about the bakery. What would you like to do? And the Dell says, okay, there's two guards gone. Gone are those days in my life as a GM. I would like them to be gone in my life as a player. But most games are so traditional and they're mechanically set the way they're set that they create that unfortunate moment where the GM finishes their speech and then goes, but the best transition here is what would you like to do? Whether they like it or not, that's the nature of the communication and that's the nature of the style of the mechanics, right? So there are design choices here based on our gaming philosophies, right? Not so much communication. I mean, one of our pillars, again, is improvisational play. And we call it that because we don't have procedures, we don't have turns, things like that, right? And because the player is, in a way, it's a handshake, it's a dance, and there's going to be the yes and, yes but, etc. We may not use that terminology, right? And we're not going to really suggest in our book that there's a certain way we want you to speak, but we definitely want players and we want to create a space that is conversational. And whether you are one of those people that wants to get in the head of your character and play from a certain headspace, fine, you can do that in this. But if you're also one of those players that don't have to engage that deeply as character, you can still enjoy this process in a conversational way, right? So anyway, I wanted to make that clear because I'm sure in the last couple of videos, people might come away going, dude, it sounds like you just hate role playing. Excuse me, hate role playing games. I don't. I love role playing. I love role playing games. But there's a certain aspect once I'm in the design headspace, I can appreciate all music, but when I'm writing music, I kind of have to hate on other music, or I could be too unduly influenced by it, and it shows up in my music, right? So, but it has nothing to do with hating other music. It has to do with saying I can't think about how good that other music is because I'm trying to make original music here, and I have to know what it is that I don't want my game to be. It's not just Dell. What do we want to do? What do we want our game to be? Dell and I came together originally about this because it was what we didn't want to do anymore. It's what we didn't enjoy. It's what we didn't want the feeling to be. And that led to us saying, then let's make the feeling we want. Let's make the thing we want, right? Again, you should design for yourself. You should paint for yourself. You should make music for yourself. You should write books for yourself. You should tell stories for yourself. You should sculpt for yourself. You should design for yourself. And then you hope that what you do authentically finds an audience, or at least touches somebody, or moves somebody, or aesthetically arrests somebody. And that's the goal of part of why we're doing what we're doing. So if it sounds like I'm hating on role-playing games, I'm not. And if it sounds like I'm an angry, disgruntled GM or player, I'm not. But I'm certainly been frustrated. And some of that is because I'm in now in the next phase of processing what I know is coming. I've got to finish Dark. Space Age of Man is this itch, and as I get closer to the writing and the developing and the playing of it, I start to recognize I've got to stay in that space, and to do so, I've got to be aware of the space that I have been previously subjected to, and what we're trying not to do, and what we're trying to do. And so, yes, I can come across a little harsh, and and I have no problem with that. If people get offended, that's on them. It's not on me. It's not my intent. My intent is to be direct, and my intent is to be with language is to be as obvious as possible. And mechanics are rules to achieve a thing, but they're also rules to control the genre effect. And third, generally to control player behavior to some degree, or to at least outline player options, which then control player behavior. I want to use magic. Oh, this game has no magic in it. Page 16. This fantasy sans magic. There are no rules to govern magic, therefore you cannot do magic. And they'll go, oh, I thought man, you said it was a fantasy game. I thought I'd get to be a magic user. No, not in this game. But next week we're playing D&D and you can make a wizard. Oh, okay, okay. Right. It's okay for your book to say what you are, and it's okay for your book to say what you are not. I prefer to say what you are and not even allude to other game systems, because what we're trying to tell people has nothing to do with other game systems in my book. I'm not going to waste my time telling you what we aren't, right? I'm not going to waste my time telling you we aren't D&D. I don't give a shit. I want you every time when you read my book, we're just going to tell you what we're doing and what we're about and what you're going to do here. And I won't waste precious page space on telling you or lecturing you on what we aren't, right? But maybe telling people what you aren't is a better way to express what you are. that might work, right? So, all right, everybody, have a wonderful week. And yeah, just for those who are watching these videos, I might come off as I might come off as a jaded gamer. Well, no, no, I have an attitude about being transparent about this, and I tend to use language that people might think is derogatory, but it's as direct as I can be, right? Okay. All right, bye.